That's the beginning of
Some of you don't know me. I'm Amy Logan, and I had a faith crisis. And I just want to tell you a little bit about myself. Like our moderator here shared with you, I am born and raised Mormon, grew up in Southern California, which I always joke that the church was true in the 80s. We had like a beautiful growing up. It was such a wonderful time. I was a lucky one. I had great leaders, wonderful bishops, just a beautiful ward, lots of youth activities, did all the things, Beehive president, Miami president, Laurel president, went off to BYU the day after I graduated. Literally the day after I graduated from high school, we loaded up our big blue Mormon van, drove the trek to get to BYU, dropped me off. I lived in Deseret Towers and stayed on the path, right? I did all the things. I married at 20. I met my husband when I was almost 19. And we married about a year and a half later. I graduated in secondary ed. I taught high school for about 4 years. And I picked secondary ed. I graduated in health education because I thought it's a good degree to have to fall back on, right? I can fall back on this if something happens to my husband. And I ended up using my degree, which I loved. And then it took us a little while to have kids, so that was always fun to have questions in that department. I have 2 boys. Ryan's 22 and Nathan's here with us today. He just got back, he's 20, he just got back from his mission in Argentina and Paraguay. And so I'm so happy he's here. But yeah, we had a couple kids, lived in Utah Valley for all of those years from 1990 on till just this last January when I'm not married to him anymore. My fiance and I moved back to California. And I just want to say that the faith crisis for me just came out of the blue. Like I'd had doubts. I had doubts about the church, but I didn't know why. I had lots of questions about polygamy and DNC 132. It didn't make sense to me, but you know the answers you always get. It will work itself out. It's okay. We don't have to do that now. I was really scared to study and research because we were also taught don't read anti-Mormon literature. And I was very obedient. I was always doing all the things I was supposed to. When I was married, I was primary president a couple times. I was young women's president a couple times. I did all of those things as well. To make my long faith crisis story shorter, in about 2005, one of my best girlfriends, she lived in Springville near each other. She is one of the people I confided in. And I said, something's just not right, and something's not right. I have doubts. And during that same time, I had gone to my bishop because I had to get a temple recommend. I didn't have any reason except that I just have doubts. I'm not sure about the church, but I still answered the questions. But one thing he told me was, the doubts are from the devil. You know, don't worry about that. And then he said, what? Go home and read your scriptures, pray more, that kind of thing. And so I just kind of shelved it. If you've had a faith crisis, you know this shelf that you keep. It just kind of kept getting heavier. I just kind of kept putting things there. Life was good. Had a beautiful family, had a beautiful home. Now fast forward about 2005, 2006, we had just built our dream home. We're living out in Lake Shore, if you're familiar with Utah Valley, beautiful farmland. And my friend calls me. Amy, you're right. And she's crying and she's panicking. And I'm like, what's going on, Heidi? What's happening? And she's like, I've been reading these books and I've been to these websites and you were right. And so I remember having this feeling like, okay, I'm 35 or 36. I'm an adult. I have my own family. It was in that moment I gave myself permission to go down the rabbit hole. And from that point on, the first book I read was Rough Stone Rolling. And pretty much by the time I was done with that book, I realized the way I believed the church and the information presented to me growing up wasn't what I had thought it was. And I had spent the next couple years consuming and reading history like I'd never cared to before. I just couldn't get enough of it. And so somewhere around 2006, I pull into my home. My kids are at school. I'm in my blue minivan now, and I pull into my driveway. I get in the garage, shut the garage, and I had the moment where I just knew the church wasn't true for me. I bawled. Somehow I got myself into the family room and I crashed to my family room floor. And I literally wanted the earth to swallow me up. It's been a long time since I've talked about this, because I knew at that moment that life would never be the same. It just was changing. How do I tell my husband? How do I tell my children who I'm raising in this church? How do I tell my mom? My whole family is Mormon. How do I tell my friends? How do I sit in church and I don't believe the same way? And so what I love about a faith crisis, and anytime you're talking to someone who's been through that, like, we get each other. We've walked that, we've been in that pain. And so I'm just gonna let this moment kind of go. Never apologize for your emotions. And we're gonna be talking about emotions today, so don't ever apologize for it. It's actually a beautiful space to be in. It's hard as hell when you're going through it. But just like that road going through St. George, not going through the canyon and taking the way around, find people who, and you find this now. Now there's so many forums and groups and books and people that you can talk to. When I went through this in 2005, I was very anonymous. There was a website where you can make a little avatar and I could talk to people, but I was so scared to tell anybody. And so thankfully now, I think we talk about it a lot more than we used to. So that's kind of my quick story. I'd been out of the church. I had my name removed in 2009. So I did kind of do that, but because if you've been raised Mormon, you have family. You have, my son just got back from his mission. You have to find ways to navigate the faith crisis. So that's what brings us here today. So I hope that as we kind of go through this process, and bear with me, we are going to be talking about thoughts and feelings. No eye rolling. Because I don't think we talk about it quite enough. But before we get into all the technical stuff I'll be walking through, there's two things I want you to remember, if nothing else, today. Your faith crisis is a moment or a series of moments in your life. And eventually you're going to get to a place where hopefully you're thankful for it, even though maybe it's been really hard. For me, it's been one of the most beautiful journeys I can be on, even with the hard parts. And you just became one of the most interesting people I know, because I know we have an instant connection. I know we can talk about lots of things. And I know we know way more about history than maybe your rank and file member knows. So, and I love that part. And I'm keeping this old school, that's the flip chart. So, all right, really quickly, what's a faith crisis? You start thinking about things in different ways. And what's happening is you're having a paradigm shift. And that hurts. It hurts your brain, it hurts your heart. You may even feel the pain in your body. The pain starts because you're starting to question your beliefs, the things that you never even thought to think about. You're starting to question. And so you're creating new neural pathways. And this can be painful. You're creating new neural pathways. Growing up in the church, you have a certain set of answers that answers everything. Your new neural pathways in the brain are making you literally hurt, right? So you're consuming information, you're reading, you're studying, but just know you're not being influenced by Satan, like my bishop told me. It's just your brain going to work. So you're sitting here, maybe you're not stuck anymore, but you felt stuck. Maybe you have a family member who's going through this, and you want to know how to help them. That could be reason. But what now? What do you do when you feel stuck, right? So here we go. We're going to be talking about our thoughts and feelings. But what I love about what I'm going to teach you today is it's actually really logical, and this appeals to my left brain side. So that's what we're going to do. Yes, really, thoughts and feelings. Here we go. Your thoughts and feelings control your life, or they at least steer the ship, right? We don't always think of it this way. But do you ever stop to question your thoughts? All right, now you have with the church, but you didn't until you could see it enough to question it. So you have done this before with the church. Now what I want you to do to help you get through the faith crisis is to do it again and again and again. Be aware of what's going on in your brain, because not every thought that runs through your head is true. And I think something very interesting that happens when we have grown up in the church, especially when we believed everything was true with a capital T, we had all the answers, right? We had an answer for everything. Now we're in this space where we don't know. And getting comfortable with that space is scary, but once you get there, it can be pretty fun. You're having a paradigm shift. This basically means you're questioning your thoughts now. And like I said, maybe it's something you haven't ever done before, but that's what happens. You, going through a faith crisis, question your complete belief system. Now, a lot of people don't ever stop to do this. I'm so glad I did, even though it didn't come the way I thought it was going. You don't prepare for this. It just happens. But what I love about the faith crisis process is, like I said, you become one of the most interesting people I know. But you look at life differently. Now you question everything differently, right? You maybe feel a little betrayed. You feel hurt. You feel like, how did I not see this? But what I find with all of that is you couldn't see it until you could see it. So think back to when this happened for you. Could anyone have told 19-year-old Amy, 25-year-old Amy, that the church isn't true? At least not for me. And I say that very sensitively because it's true for many. For me, it's not. But could someone have said that to me? No, it had to be the right moment for me. So yes, my friend called me, but she was kind of confirming doubts that I'd had years before. And that's when I gave myself permission. So questioning your thoughts. This is a fascinating process. And this is what I work with my clients all the time. Right, you guys? A few of you are here.
Amy, while you're doing that, I was just thinking, people did tell me the church wasn't true when
Yeah.
I was 19.
Yeah, okay. But
As a missionary, I got all kinds of anti-material stuff.
That's true.
Right?
Yeah.
I wasn't ready.
But you weren't ready, so you don't see it. And that's why we say you don't see it till you see it. You just don't see it till you see it. It just happens when it happens. It unfolds in great time. Okay, I told you guys I was a teacher, right? And my clients know this. I will be giving you homework. The first thing we do when we start to question or think about our thoughts is I just want you to start today as you leave and going through this week. I want you to start to just look at your thoughts because we have a gazillion thoughts a day and some we don't even pay attention to. Some guy's wearing a blue shirt walking down the street. Something weird happened. Something was funny. Things just happen. But if you're like me and you think a lot and maybe you overthink things, sometimes we don't even think to question the thoughts even about ourselves, right? The way you do everything, the way you put your pants on in the morning, the way you drive your car to work. The thoughts and beliefs you have about everything are neural pathways created in the brain. And the subconscious thoughts you have too. You might have beliefs about yourself that are deep in there that you don't even think about during your waking hours, but they run kind of this program through your brain. That's fun when I get to this point with my clients because we do a lot of deep work here when we start dissecting all your thoughts. My job is to hold a mirror to your brain. What's going on in there? What is going on in your brain? And when you're stuck with anything, it's hard to tell. And if you've ever been a place where you feel stuck, especially faith crisis, because I think what happens with faith crisis is we think something's wrong with us. Because everyone in my life, I don't think I had one non-Mormon friend. I had acquaintances, but not close friends. Everyone in my ward was my social structure. My family spanned everywhere from, they lived within 30 minutes of each other, from Eagle Mountain down to Springville, Spanish Fork. And they were all members. Everyone was a member. So when I went through my faith crisis initially, I thought, this is me. I feel alone. I feel separate from the rest of my family because I'm not on the thought pattern that goes on when you're a member. So what's going on in your brain when you're going through this? What do you think keeps you stuck, or what has kept you stuck, or what did keep you stuck in your faith crisis? Can you think of anything that made you feel like, I'm not going to get through this, I can't get out of it?
Living in Utah.
Yes.
It's everywhere.
It is everywhere. Yeah. And like I said, I lived here for 30 years. So we moved to California. I'm like, even though that's where I grew up and had beautiful, wonderful, lovely Mormon memories, that's a beautiful part of my life. But it's everywhere here. It's on the billboards, everywhere. Yeah.
It's also everywhere in your life.
Yes.
Your whole life, your heritage, if you're a heritage Mormon.
Yeah.
Your culture, your friends.
Yeah.
Your free time activities. I work for the Defense Department of Defense. I go around the world. Everybody else knows how to go out for a beer.
You're like beer. Wait.
Yeah, but you don't know. You go to a party, somebody has a couple of beers, they kind of loosen up a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah.
You get uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because they're having a good time.
Yeah.
You're watching sin right before you.
Right. You're a sinner. Yeah. Everything.
And you can't talk to anybody.
Yeah.
Because you're looking around your ward to see if somebody's making some veiled comments, but maybe they're thinking some of the things.
Yeah.
That, but there's nobody to talk to.
Yeah. No.
I mean, when I started, kind of like what you're alluding to, about 5 or 6 years ago,
You think you're the only one.
yeah, but
Yeah.
you're exploding,
Yeah.
and there's no pressure available.
Right.
It's just so good.
You can leave the church. Why don't you just leave it alone? Have you heard that one
You
before?
can't sleep.
Right. Yeah. Who do you talk to?